All right, we're live. We'll wait. Is it that cold down there, man?
Yeah. I mean, it's not cold to you, but it's cold to me. It was 37 degrees when I got my truck this
No,
morning.
man, and that's south cold too, man. That's even worse than 32 degrees up here.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, dude. When I was in Houston, 32 degrees and with that humid air felt like it was 10 here.
Oh yeah, the wet air's bad.
Nick was asking where you're at. He just said, Charles, where are you?
In
He's
Atlanta, outside of it, on the west side of Atlanta.
west side of Atlanta. Well, cool. I was Charles pulled his car over graciously so we could talk a little bit about our Monday show here at 12 o'clock. Charles DeLaTorre and I do this every week to a little bit talk about the market in the southeast. We chat a little bit about the opportunity for optionality, which I think is a great topic to talk about. But I was just going to chat with you about the NOLA vibe that I from being down there.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd be real curious to know what you came up with on that.
Yeah, so very interesting. 700 people in Louisville. This is the people that want to be there, right? The people
Yep.
that are sick of lockups, want to see other human beings. Traditionally, there's 1,400 people at this show. There's 700. Probably no coincidence it's split right down the middle, right? Um,
No,
so
not at all.
I guess Greg and I were talking this week, and it seems to be that the real it's naturally the most aggressive people are going to be there. So the conversations I asked people were business going to be better than next year. Everybody thought that volume would be better, but everybody was. I walked away with everybody being really bullish, which always concerns me a little bit. But it seemed to be the conversation was everybody distributors are building inventory. Inventory is getting built everywhere, right? A lot of people are trying to mill levels are trying to get stuff across the border from Canada before there's some perceived new duty added on. So liquidity is good, but there's a lot of wood still flowing through the pipeline. So overall, great conference. People were happy. People were willing to go out and buy a lot of beers because they had a good year.
I'd imagine so.
Oh man, much different from when I've been to it in subdued markets. People had that Kool-Aid smile from ear to ear, man. Like just like stuff is
Good.
really good, man. Like it's like
Nobody had a dose of kryptonite this year. That's for sure.
yeah, absolutely. So it was cool. Southern Pine Market being what's going on there? Anything interesting there, Charles?
I mean, I think you and I have discussed it, and the arbitrage opportunities or optionality opportunities between 2 to 6 spruce and pine is still there, obviously. The other thing is that in Southern Yellow Pine, I mean, 2 by 4s, in my opinion, are greatly overvalued, considering what you've been doing this about as long as I've been alive. Um, you know, Southern Yellow Pine 2 by 4 16 number two is trading at an $80 premium, or was 5 days ago, to spruce.
Yeah.
So what's going to cause that to change? Or mills hiding wood? What's the scenario? I think 2 by 6 as a whole is going to stay tight. From a lot of the things and a lot of the feedback that I've gotten, especially in studs. So it'll be real interesting to see. You mentioned something about guys building inventory. I think they may be past that for the next couple weeks. I think, what happened last year is probably going to mirror itself. We're going to have a bit of a dip over the next couple of weeks, and then things will firm up because people will start looking at supply chain crunches and timelines for Q1 demands. So then things will firm back up and level out and maybe pop a little bit depending on the items. The one key takeaway is the lethargic OSB market.
It's
I mean,
crazy.
it hasn't moved up, down, sideways in a month and a half.
Yeah.
And everybody on the middle level is ecstatic because, I mean, at these numbers, they're still extremely profitable. But for anybody that's buying for jobs or back to back and are trying to sell off contracts, it makes it extremely difficult to be active in that market without some sort of volatility outside of relationships.
Yeah, you know what? That's good. And when I said people were building inventory, I should have been more species specific because I agree with you. So one thing that I heard from probably a handful of people down there, and it's something that I don't ever appreciate unless I'm talking to people. You probably get a better sense of this. Some of the treaters and people that sold program wood last year to some of these big home centers don't want to get caught in the same situation they were where they were short inventory. So I think they readjusted some of those contracts. That makes sense. A lot of people were saying, "Hey, we got off sides with our contracts a lot last year, and we were kind of held to having to ship some of these. Some did, some didn't." But I think they readjusted some of those contracts. Does that make sense? One guy said, "Hey, they ate it, and they only have so much wiggle room between transportation and treating." And if they get offsides in the lumber, it got real bad real quick. Does that make any sense at all?
Well, in the treating business, I mean, your margins are just, I mean, it's razor sharp, right?
Yeah,
But when you start talking about programs with these big boxes, I don't know if they want to continue that relationship and continue to have the ability to move off those kinds of volumes. There's only so many ways you can prepare for that. You know, what you're going to readjust contracts based on last year's need. Well, we all know what happened in the past does not dictate future performance.
right.
So if you look at it from that standpoint, it may turn into a situation if they adjust it up based on what happened and not being able to ship wood and supply chain issues and trucking and so on and so forth. They adjust it up. There might be a glut of secondary wood coming out of treaters yards because the retail side's not as hot. So it brings up a real interesting conundrum as to how to prepare for that and how that's perceived in the marketplace, not only from the wholesale trade side, but also from, you know, your dealer side, your small dealer, your big pro dealers, and your big box. And what is a trickle down effect?
Yeah. So I guess my question is, I didn't. It seemed to me the feedback was it. I may be speaking out of school. Treaters weren't building an inventory right now, and they historically do.
No, they're not. You're exactly right.
And that could be the reason why 6 inch is so low, 8 inch and 10 inch are out there slogging around. I mean, are they going to all of a sudden come in at once and decide to pick something up? Are they happy just doing the way they're doing it, just in time, flowing in and flowing out right now?
Well, I think right now they have no other choice.
Yeah,
I think anybody that's obligated to wood, you own it weekly. So how do you transfer that risk to somebody else is a question. I mean, you look at 2x4s and 2x8s; those go hand in hand due to the fact that on the mill level they can value add that product in house. So that's why 2x8s have popped as much as they have over the past 3 weeks.
right.
But you know, the reason why 2x4s and your narrows are so tight is because, quite frankly, a lot of truss guys finally got plates.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? That's so funny that you said that. We visited Nick and I on the way home. Visited a handful of people, and that's exactly the feedback. I asked them, "Hey, I was at the BCMC a month ago, and there's a problem with plates." And like, yeah, that's seemingly people. They eventually that remedies itself. And you're right. It sounds like it has, right?
I mean, it's definitely, I don't know if it's remedied itself, but it's definitely gotten to a point where people are hopping back in the market and buying. I mean,
Yeah.
that's indicative of you know, $800 plus 2 416 on a delivered basis in Southern Yellow Pine when you can buy for, you know, mid to high sevens and spruce.
Right. So here's a good question. We stopped by one guy looking for carloads of 2x6, 116, and 5/8. I'm like, can you use pine? And I ship pine into the whole area all the time. They're like, no, we can't use pine because it twists in the walls. Like, this is one of those where their perception is their reality, right? So I'm trying to figure out how to sell them on this because the difference between 2x6, 116, and 5/8 Southern Pine and 2x6, 116, and 5/8 Spruce. I don't know if it's as much of a difference as now delivered up to these locations, but it has been pretty significant. So it's good to keep that optionality in your bag of tools, right?
I mean, it definitely is, but once again, you have to go to somebody that's open to having a conversation and open to learning something new or a different way to skin a cat. So, you know, it's one of those things to where pick and choose your battles, right? So if you
Yeah.
have somebody that's been doing it for an extreme amount of time, and they're in your environment, it's a lot different because down here you have people that deal in primarily spruce and studs, but are open to Southern Yellow Pine because they buy a lot of Southern Yellow Pine for other applications. So
Right.
they can understand when you start speaking, okay, you know, instead of selling you a number two, we can upgrade you to a number one or better. There are certain things that we can do to I guess give the perception that it's a higher value stick than just your standard number two. But up to those delivered markets, it makes it tough because then you're not fighting the southbound freight as a value add for Southern Yellow Pine in the Southeast or out to Texas or anywhere in between Southern Ohio, Southern Illinois, Central Illinois, Missouri, stuff like that. But you also are not in a position to where people have, quite frankly, a lot of experience in dealing in Southern Yellow Pine plate stock or other items to where they understand how it works in the environment.
Right. Right. Yeah. I was going to ask you one question. My mind bonked on me here. I'm trying to think. Oh, Euro. Okay, so we're down at this convention. That's one of the big things. So the breakdown of the people there were not as many Canadian mills showed up. But some did. A lot of people did, but a lot of them didn't want to deal with the whole cross border deal. But all the Europeans were there. So and it's interesting seeing when they all get together and they talk in their groups, all these different guys, right? But one thing I've noticed with the European spruce is it keeps coming over, and I think we talked about a few things. There's still some problem at some of the ports because there's a lot coming over. One of the ports in the Pacific or up in the Northeast was saying they have a problem because a lot of lumber comes in and then they get slammed with European plywood or Brazilian plywood. But it's still coming over. And it's interesting how that trades. Some of it goes to everybody's built their little groups up. Some of these, there's a handful of these European mills that only sell to three or four of the big boxes, or not boxes, three or four of the big retailers, and never discover price anywhere else. And they're happy doing that, right? They don't care what else is trading for. And then there's some of them that sell to all the different distributors and they're people that they picked and chose, and that finds a market, right? But it's interesting over time how that's finding a market and getting out there. I mean, we've got 1,000 trucks listed today. A bunch of them are European through a handful of these people. But what do you think about the European spruce coming over? You still are doing your short stud program for the shed builders. Anything new there? Or anything you've seen there over time here?
Well, I think, so we've got two things going on. Number one, if Europeans have been here for a while, and I think you and I have touched on this, or you and Greg, or you and Matt, they're going to continue to come back because they found a market that works and they found a way to get rid of wood and they've established relationships, right? So those guys that have longevity that have been in the market a while are not going anywhere. Your volumes are going to change based on those individual markets, but I think at the same time, it's also going to force some of those guys to look at different ways to do business outside of what you just described. I mean, that level of comfort and the longevity of those comfort levels are something to be fought. Our diversification in our European product has as of late gotten legs, right? Because you had the great crash. But before that, even years before that, there's not a lot of Euro guys that want to talk to new guys because of that.
They don't at all. Matter of fact, they're like, we're happy with our distributors right now. And some of the few that I mentioned that don't ever want to have transparency, I don't know why they're happy doing what they're doing, because I think they just want to get paid for moving their volume and go home and do their stuff. But they've built their alliances and they push it through people, and I think it's changing a little bit though.
Well, it's going to have to, because those guys are, I think, a lot of the big guys and the forces and the players in that European spruce scenario, right, see the writing on the wall. I mean, Western Canada is going to be a shadow of its former self within the next 3 years. I mean, it already is to an extent, but even more so over the next 3 to 5 years. So if that gives them the ability to come in and secure markets and make markets and create finished good that primarily was dominated by a Canadian stick, why wouldn't they do that? Especially if they're already doing it, you can adjust your import volumes based on what your demand is and establish new relationships in some niche products. And that's really where we've had our success in developing those new relationships.
Yeah, and you're right in the breadbasket right down there where you sit in that perfect spot where you get it from all the different ports, right? So you get a good look at all that stuff, and you create one hell of a nice product out of it. With that said, too, European OSB has been coming over. That's showing up in the Northeast and the South, right?
Yeah, I got offered some out of Tampa the other day, but I don't know what my comfort level is, and based on our customer base, what their comfort level is on that. I mean, it's one thing for a dimensional stick that's audited by TP or WCLIB or whoever to come over here, which both of those agencies already do some North American stock. So it's kind of hand in the glove. When you start getting into engineered products and you have, just like some people won't use a Tico stamp plywood from South America.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what the appetite is. And I think that European OSB has still got a ways to go before it really garners a large
It's,
market share.
well, it's yeah.
But
It is stamped though, right? For the most part,
it is. It is a stamp product, but I'm not too familiar with it because once again, our customer base has an appetite for domestic product, not
yeah.
not European product.
We'll have to get a better thought of that. One other thing, you and I went back forth this weekend with a few people. Um, what's up with this Brazilian? I don't even know. It's 2x4 non-grade stamped, but has sheets of paper with it coming into these ports now. Like I mean,
I mean
so
that's been coming over for a while, but a majority of it was fence pickets and pallet parts,
yeah, so I didn't
right?
know that. It makes sense with all the plantation pine they have down there, but why don't they just put an HT stamp on it or stamp it? I mean,
I don't know because I've dealt with some of those guys direct and asked the same question, and as soon as you start asking some of these technical questions, it kind of goes to the wayside. Now, granted, they have to have and meet that import requirement as far as moisture and insects and so on and so forth.
sure,
But
otherwise
just be,
they can't unload the vessel.
that's exactly right. But at that point, say you have an end user that demands some sort of documentation on a stick or a unit or something, and that transparency in the supply chain is not there, so it makes it very difficult for people such as ourselves to actually utilize that material.
Right, right.
Because I mean,
Gotcha.
I've gone as far as talk to some of the agencies and asked them, and they said basically if it doesn't come over, and once again, things may have changed, but 2.5, 3 years ago, if it came in with the documentation, the photosanitary documentation, they could unload the vessel. But in order for it to qualify for a heat treated product on an industrial application, you would have to reheat treat that product and then stamp it with your own stamp.
Okay. So why doesn't somebody fly down to Brazil in those areas and put in a mill and start making Southern Yellow Pine 2 and better down there and bringing it over?
Well, I think HS is about to do that. They're about to spend like $250 million.
Are they really? What?
Yeah, in South America.
So they're going to throw a mill in and start bringing your Southern Yellow Pine 2 and better over.
Yep. I don't know
That's
if it's going to be grade stamp. I just know I read somewhere they were building a mill,
so. Think
and
about
that's some pretty reliable firsthand knowledge.
what you could do is if you had something like that coming over and they're bringing sticks, get certified and have some MSR machines and other thing and regrade it here, and that product looks like a beautiful stick.
I mean, it's gorgeous stuff. I mean, a lot of that stuff's used for turning blanks and cabinets and really nice applications. But what I've learned from the Brazilians is that they want a lot of money for their product. They're really proud of it, and it makes it really difficult to put in a supply chain based on that because of the lack of flexibility.
Yeah, or
And
it's getting turned into it's getting turned into plywood, more of a high end product, right?
that's exactly right.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. So what's Charles's day and week look like this week?
Last full week of the month. I mean, it's crazy. The plant's wide open. We've got final inspection. I'm actually going to final inspection tomorrow on one of our new trim lines. We'll have the fourth one in second week of January. So that'll be up and running the week of 11/22. We got a lot of wood to ship, a lot of wood ready at the mill, a lot of wood ready at the plant. So I mean, it's all hands on deck. Try to get it all accomplished.
What are those lines? You were busier a one arm paper hanger last week trying to get those lines up. How much more efficiency does that create, and volumetrically, what does that do for you?
Volumetrically, I mean, once we get it all set up and some of the material handling stuff in place, I mean, we should be cutting anywhere from 550 to 600,000 board foot a week.
Dude, you're a difference maker, man, down there. You're like you're scaling.
Well, I mean, go big or go home, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're up in you're gonna be with you're gonna be a force to be reckoned with. I mean, you've got some great, you and I've just talked. You got some great stuff coming forward, man. I think people should keep an eye out for you because if you get in with somebody like yourself early, you could provide some great just what you can provide people over a long period of time is something that people should understand and realize. I mean, these relationships last a long time, and it's always good to get into with somebody as they're scaling this way, right? I mean, some of your best friends are the ones you've known forever through the good and bad times, right? Not just want to
That,
jump on when you're famous.
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So if you want to reach Charles, best way to get a hold of you, Charles. I don't know if somebody could throw your email up, but go ahead and what's the best way to get a hold of you?
C DeLaTorre at ifpwood.com.
There it is. It's up on the bottom.
There it
C.
is.
DeLaTorre at ifpwood.com. And Charles has been a good supporter of Materials Exchange. We do a lot of chatting back and forth. So mxlumber.com. There's over 1,000 items listed up for sale across the United States today. We're the only digital exchange creating transparency. We're trying to change it from a transparency of pea soup to a little bit more transparent. So, all right, Charles, we'll have a good trip. Appreciate you pulling over and getting on the phone. Everything was great. We'll look forward to talking to you.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Ash.
All right, man.